Yay, we connected.
Hi. Yes. Yeah, I can. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you too.
Oh,
So,
good, good, good.
and I can see your beautiful painting on the background.
Well, something I'm working on, but this is, I have two studios. And so today I'm with us staying home and following the rules right now. I'm working in the basement, which is kind of a smaller little studio space that I've had for 20 years, but most of the time I'm at a larger place where I have a little more leg room and space. And so you can see the rafters. See, it's not.
So you're in a basement, and
Yeah, yeah,
do you use one of these lights, like what you showed us on for to see? Like, how
yeah.
do you paint so you can see that?
Well, starting years ago, and I've been painting for 50 years. We had a lot of artificial light issues.
Yeah.
I was never in an economic situation where I could really construct a really nice studio that where I would have maybe had a north light situation, which is constant, uh, kind of white balanced light. So we came up with artificial ways, and actually now I prefer that. And even in my other studio where I'm not today, where I have more space and that capacity to have natural light, it's so varying. It's overcast here today. That's going to be a different color, temperature, and strength of light. So I've gone artificial now for the majority of my life painting. And up until recently, everything was fluorescent, and I still have a few fluorescent bulbs down here. But now LED, and we can
It's a
pick
way
the
to
color.
go.
Yeah, pick the color, temperature, and it's great. It's not doesn't get hot, doesn't draw a lot of electricity, and lasts a long time. So that's what's basically down here. Is kind of a mix of fluorescent and LED.
Okay, I can see but quite a few people join us, so let me reintroduce myself. I'm Dasha Jamison with Red Rock Pastel Society of Nevada. We are doing series of live interviews to promote our online show, what we have going on right now, and entry deadline is April 25th, so you can still paint and enter. And we have Richard McKinley. He is president of IF's, great teacher, and I'm pleased to be able to call him my friend. He is a PSA Hall of Fame, Master Circle, any other word you can put after his
Oh,
name, you can, but I have a squirrel memory, so I'm not able to remember all of that, but we have them on a bio. So thank you, Richard, so much
yeah,
for
yeah.
finding.
I appreciate that, Tasha, and you're a wonderful artist. And the Red Rock Pastel Society, that's been your baby there in Nevada, and the other people working with you on that. It's just a wonderful organization. So it's nice to see you doing this. And all I would add about those initials, any of us that paint, I mean, it's nice and you earn those things, but it doesn't make me paint better the next day. That's the thing, is that blank piece of paper, or surface that we're working on. I wish those initials just meant that it got better. And maybe in a way it gets harder because the expectations are bigger. So that's all I would say.
You're so humble always, and uh, I cannot skip that part. And I want to tell a small short story how I found Richard McKinley, and it started with this box of Great American pastels right there. So I purchased those, I believe, on Blick Art, and they had painting on a box and painting inside of it, like on an insert.
Yeah.
And colors were just out there. There were so many purples and violets in a landscape. And I thought landscape need to be green. Like I truly believed like it need to be green. And I like, that's not right. So I started Googling name of Richard McKinley, and I realized he's a great artist. And originally, why I bought this set of pastels, right? Because colors are beautiful. I really enjoyed color palette. Like I really liked those colors, and I watched like various palettes before. So I choose this one, and I like, let me read more about him. And it was 2017 when I discovered those velvety smooth pastels. A couple of months after that, in August, you were conducting workshop with Tatiana at Chicago Pastel Painters
Yeah.
Association,
Yeah.
and she had a last minute cancellation. So I was able to get in, and I drove from Tennessee. I used to live there before, and the rest is history. So I become addicted to Richard McKinley. We have
I remember that day. You know, we were out in the Morton Preserve painting. Yeah, we
yeah.
went out on location. You did a killer little field study painting.
I have a
Yeah,
first one,
yeah,
not the one what
yeah.
you told me to put a red dot and frame. I sold that one,
See,
but
see, see.
see, but I had a very first one, and I did not know like how lucky I am to be in a group of artists. And instead of watching demo, I just stood there and started painting. So I had no clue, like really. But now I have some clue, and I promise to be quiet and let you talk, and I will
Well,
put.
but see, I would just tease you because I can see that box of pastels that was just up there, and there's a big section of green in there. So yes,
Yeah,
I love violet. I'm not ashamed to admit that I think violet is really, in a way, seriously, it's a magical color, especially in the landscape, because it is a secondary being made up, of course, of two primaries. And then green being a secondary made up of two primaries, they really harmonize well. So its use in chromatically toning and softening and atmospheric effects in the landscape. But then justifiably, except for flowers, violet doesn't exist in nature. You know, it the atmospheric effect of redder mountains, like where you're living now in Nevada, become more violet in the distance. But those really strong violets only exist as flowers, as flora out in the landscape. But I still love Violet. She's a good friend, and I never miss a chance to buy a violet purple pastel stick. So,
exactly. And
yep.
there are certain sticks on your recommendation supply list. I swear by those, like few new pastels, Creta color,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then Rembrandt stick,
Yeah.
like on your supply list. They are great for
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, those type of sticks, as I call them, I don't, you know, teasingly we say we have our magic sticks, but they really
Exactly.
become old friends, you know. And in talking to painters, I'm been an oil painter my whole life and worked in every medium as well. But you find brushes you really like or certain pigments that you really like, and that's what those sticks are. Is that, and you've fallen in love with them too. We understand the hardness of the stick. It's comfortable in our hand and we don't have to think about it. We know what it's capable of doing. But the key is, and I'm at an age where I can really get away with this, hoard them because
Exactly.
manufacturers
Oh my
they
gosh.
yeah.
You say that example like year ago in Santa Barbara, what you need
Mhm.
to hoard sticks, and I'm like, why? I can always buy them. Please tell why do you need to hoard sticks? What you like?
Well, you know, for me and earlier on, and you know, we are being humorous about the term of hoarding them, but it's that more about the comfort. I had my first major mentor was a woman that had been trained at the Chicago Art Institute, an amazing artist, Margaret Stahl Moyer, and she had been the first wife of Ben Stahl, who was a very famous American artist earlier in the last century. And Margaret taught me a lot of really good fundamentals and academic things about painting. And one of them was that we really should never be completely dependent on our product. I remember coming back one time and saying that a certain artist I had worked with couldn't finish the painting because they were waiting for a certain brush to come. So everything was delayed. And with great kind of contempt, Margaret, who a tiny little petite gal, she said, well, he should be able to do that with a popsicle stick. You know, it's a matter of shapes, values, colors, and, you know, you shouldn't be so dependent on your product. What I'm getting at about hoarding is the comfort zone. You know, you reach a point in your life painting, whether it's surfaces or brands of pastel, we're dependent on manufacturers. pigments come and go, manufacturers come and go, they change their formulas at time. And if you really do fall in love with something, some specific thing, and you don't want to refamiliarize yourself with something else, hoard it. You know, I joke, I tell people, I have a garage full of Viva paper towels. And not because of what's going on right now, but I just
yeah.
don't want, if they change those paper towels, I don't want to have to get used to a new paper towel. So.
Thanks to you, Richard, I had alcohol, 70% alcohol. I had wet napkins,
Yeah.
and I had Viva Pepe towels. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to send Jeff on a hunting
Yeah.
mission to get all this stuff,
Yeah.
because I was preparing for my plein air season. So I
Yeah.
had all of that like in the back of my car. Yeah, I was prepared.
That's why artists are going to survive all this, especially the pastelists. We had the 90 and 70% alcohol and all the towels.
I know, like just need some more caffeine and
Yeah.
we're good to go.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see what you're working on, this beautiful painting what behind you. And how do you find time and inspiration between everything else what you're doing with IAPS and life to paint?
You know, that's a tough one to answer. And other people have all their situations as well. You know, you have family issues and you try to keep friendships. And then, as you said, we get really busy. And IAPS is a very time-consuming situation, especially currently right now. We've been dealing with an exhibition that is hung and up, amazing paintings in the exhibition, but we physically couldn't be there. So we've been focused on building content and videos and educational things and promoting that. And that keeps me really busy. And really the reason I'm doing it's because I love pastel and I want the legacy to carry on, and then we'll hand that torch off to someone else. You know, when it comes to finding time to paint, it really is the cliche of discipline. And I loved something that Scott Christensen, a legendary oil painter, had shared a few decades ago with people. He said that even, you know, you go, oh, I have a job and I don't really have time to paint, and then I have kids to take care of her family. He said, give yourself 45 minutes every night when things are quiet or first thing in the morning. He said, 45 minutes. And you go, well, I can't get much done in 45 minutes. But 45 minutes every day adds up. And pretty soon those hours add up after the weeks and the months and the years. And it's amazing what you can accomplish. So I taught myself to get rid of kind of the decadent feeling of I wanted major space and time. So I do work a lot in stolen moments. I'll slip away for a short period of time and work on something. And then when possible, I like those day after day because there is a rhythm that you get into in painting in that time. And I would also just say that I think being in love with the landscape, the majority of my artistic life, and what we now call plein air painting, which was just location painting when I was very young, it is an ability. It's like exercise. You have to go out there, and once you're out there, you're out there. And you may only have an hour or two to work, but it's focused time. And then that helps a lot too.
Yeah, I produce much more when I'm on location, and especially when you are in a group of fellow artists, your productivity is just skyrocketing. And it's not the same in a studio, but it's where discipline come to place. And
I would share one other little observation about that. I mean, God, you're sparking memories that go way back for me, but talking with other artist friends when I was younger, and we really had a lot of demands on our time then. And at the end of the day, we said, you know, if you really do force yourself with discipline to treat this like a job, if you show up late every day, you're going to get fired. So it's amazing when you have that commitment in your life that I have to be somewhere at a certain time, you make it happen. And with art, I think there's a part of us sometimes more subconscious that almost feels guilty this is a luxury, you know, and I mean, it isn't justifiable thought. It's part of our societal. How many times we tell someone, you know, they say, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm an artist. And they say, no, for a living, you know. And so there's those little subtle things that we carry around to where, well, I really should get the laundry done. I really should mow the yard. I really should do this and do this and do this before I have time to paint. And you have to be your own best friend and reverse that and say what I'm doing is precious and it needs to be valued as much as if I was punching a clock for a paycheck. So that you don't fire yourself as an artist at the end of the day. Yeah. Well, and that's funny too, because it is like the show that you have coming up, and you know, we all worry about what we're going to enter for a show, and that's very similar too. Is it's like, well, it could be better. You know, I can do something better. It can be better. This isn't quite right. I'm not really done. And you know, really, no painting's ever done. And if you constantly keep pushing it out, saying it has to be better, and we don't enter, you know, it is the comment, you're never going to get in if you don't enter. And that's the only way that we can find out in that subjective way is what one person sometimes, or a panel of people as jurors, think of what we're doing in our work. And that's that feedback we need. So it's the same thing in entering shows. I run into a lot of people, you know, like we've been discussing why we find excuses not to paint. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm only a beginner. You know, and you go, that's not really the truth. You've got to put yourself out there and put your work out there, and then learn from that feedback. And so take a chance, you know, enter a show. You've got a deadline coming up. What is it? Just a couple days now on, you know, and in a way, not to make light of it, but perfect timing. It's not a physical show. With most of us not able right now to even get to our framers to have something framed. So as we're speaking using technology and doing digital means, having some of these digital shows as incentive for us to enter, you know, and the others that are out there as well. But this is going to be a great show. So, and not just because I'm involved, honestly.
No, it's going to be, of course, that's we have a name. We have a great prizes,
wow.
And we have
and
all
see,
of that.
You know,
now we need artists to show up, you know, even virtually. Please send us something so we can give those amazing prizes to you. Just please.
Yeah. It's, you know, I would just say about the shows too, to personalize it. You know, as an artist who's made my living this way since I was really in my teens and made it up as I went and never missed an opportunity, the sales were always wonderful, and having gallery representation and the ability to have exhibitions and things, and how we feel when somebody opens their wallet and buys a painting. But for myself, acceptance in a show, or even the ability to get some feedback from an artist that I admired, that peer, like we're talking as artist friends and other artists joining us, is more valuable. So I think it's why I became involved with various art pastel societies and various art societies around the world, and have volunteered at IAPS in this position, is encouraging that community, the artist community. So good for you for mounting a show and putting all the efforts, you and your whole organization, in doing that, because it does take a lot of work.
Thank you so much. And you know, firsthand, I just watched today your amazing interview with Anna Wainwright about certain paintings in the exhibition, and it was so insightful to see what jury or judge see in a painting. So my following question: as a juror or judge, what do you look for in a painting?
Yeah, well, I love that question. And I think when I was young, and I think there's still a lot of people that wish for the answer I'm about to give, which is you try to be completely subjective. You try to just look at the mechanics of the piece, you know, and a lot of people, they say, well, that's what's fair. You know, is it drawn accurately? In representationalism, if it's drawn accurately, if the value relationships are accurate, is the color harmonies accurate? And that's all pertinent to it. But there really is something that's very non-definable, which is the art of it, the creative capacity of it. I'll single out a painting right now that's part of the IAPS exhibition, and I'm going to be working on a little video of kind of a gallery tour of that as well. That'll be the conclusion of what we're offering. But there's one painting in particular, and they're all lovely, but it's one of Corey Pitkin's, and it's just fabulous painting.
He just joined Red Rock Pastel Society.
Wonderful.
And I'm thrilled. Yeah, I got convinced him on during live interview. That was amazing.
Nice. Well, and what I point out about it is the things that speak to me more now as the quality of our work has gotten larger in jurying and judging is the sensitivity, the creativity, the innovation that goes into it. So why I singled out Corey's painting is it's very traditional realism. I mean, fabulous edges and use of, but the compositional choices of design and the sense of the subject matter and who we are as a viewer looking at. I mean, all these elements come together beyond just competence, you know. Well drawn, yes. Good values, yes. Great color harmonies. You know, tick all the technical boxes, but then there's something that bumps paintings up higher.
It goes to the heart.
And that's really personal. See, that's the part where people like the legend Dwayne Wakeham or Jimmy Wright, who I've been interviewing and archiving a bunch of conversations with, they speak to that point where you've got to say, this is my opinion. You know, that this speaks to me like certain music speaks to me, and then you can attempt to explain why. So that's really the hardcore of it. And I know that almost doesn't sound fair sometimes to say, well, between these very competent paintings, why did you select this one? And something about it spoke to me on that level. And I really do look for creativity, something different. And yet I'm kind of a traditional painter. I mean, I don't get into every show. People always say, oh, you guys say that and it's not true. Oh, the rejection notices, you know, I mean, that's the humbling part. That's what
show us to them. Like, I don't trust you. You do get
gosh, no, it's so true. I mean, I could name names of standing with friends in exhibitions that we happened to be attending, and you're standing next to these legendary artists. And I mean, some of the biggest legends out there. And, you know, you say, oh, what a great show and stuff. And they kind of whisper because nobody really wants to talk about their failures, right? They go, I didn't get in. And you go, you know, there is that moment of shock. It's like, well, do they know who you are? And you go, you know, the paintings are getting really, really good. And you go, yeah, you know.
And what's the next comment what goes after that? We taught them too well.
Well, I was just going to share that story because it's absolutely the truth. I was standing at an IAPS exhibition. It was 2 or 3 conventions ago, and it was kind of a quiet time in the exhibition, so I could be contemplative with the paintings I was going down looking at, and just beautiful work, you know. And I remember PSA starting in the 70s, and we had nice work, but now we just have thousands of great paintings. And Albert Handel was coming down the other way, and all of a sudden we're standing next to each other and we're looking at this amazing painting, and not a word's being said. And all of a sudden I looked at him and I said, Albert, my God, these paintings are getting so good. And then in perfect Albert style, this little pause, he said, you know, Richard, I think we've taught them all too well.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So guys, if you need to blame someone for not getting into the show, you should blame those amazing teachers out there who did taught generations of pastelists to produce such a great quality of work. And just kidding, yes. But how do you I see a comment from Corey Pitkin. He's apparently watching us, and he's saying what you and he's saying what you too kind. So
no. Absolutely not. I mean, that, humility is great. And I mean that with sincerity and no humor, because, you know, it, painting's a crazy game. It's a bit like a singer that never really hears their own voice. You think about it, they can listen to a recording, but that's a disconnect. There's a similar disconnect with them the way we look at our own work. And so we can take pride sometimes in something we've done. We know how hard we've worked and what we've done, but we never have the same relationship as the audience that's clapping. And I've always been more attracted, whether it was singers, writers, actors that I've been fortunate to meet at various times, to witness that degree of humility, because humility keeps you grounded and trying hard in your own journey. But at the same time, you have to accept the sincerity of when something is excellent, it's excellent. Own it. You did it.
How do you personally select exhibitions or shows what you would send your work to? How do you choose?
That another really great question, and it's been taken the wrong way a couple times. I'll explain what I mean. Early on, I was, rural Oregon's where I grew up. Well before the digital age and connection, and so being able to enter any show that I had the possibility to enter and sometimes get accepted was really just fabulous. So I entered everything, and then there's a point where you've kind of taken from that banquet for a long time. You've gotten in the shows and you've earned the different honors that are bestowed after doing that for a period of time, and the awards and things that come with it. And it started to feel, I felt like I was almost taking up the air, some of the space. It's like now what I mean about how that can be taken two ways is somebody goes, oh, well, you think you're so good, you're above that. It really was, I've had my turn, and that's great. So what I try to do now is I try to pick some of the really tough, bigger shows where they are getting thousands of entries, and I didn't enter even those for a while. The PSA shows, I didn't enter IAP shows for a long time, and it was, you've also got to stay visible, and you don't want people starting to say, whatever happened to them? Did they die? And you go, no, they're still painting, because that's our connection to our family. It's showing up in a way at the family reunion. So I only enter a few shows every year, but I still like to visit and go and see as many shows as possible. But I really encourage people, from what I received when I was young, out of entering those shows, which was a sense of belonging, a sense of finding a tribe, connecting with similar people, sometimes being stimulated to think differently and challenged. Entering shows can challenge you. It's okay to disagree with the jurors. It's okay to disagree with the judge. You just don't have to be argumentative about it. There's a polite way to say, I don't understand why this person liked this piece. So I'm going to take it full circle back to something you said earlier. It's why when we had to not be able to physically be in Florida for that show, my idea was to gather the different committees at IF's, the exhibition committee, the communications committee, and some of us on the executive committee, and really pull the curtain back, I said. Let's get the jurors to discuss their perspective, which we did, and put that out there. And that's merely just three people. Three different people would have some different things. Get them to comment about a few paintings, and not have that sense of, well, I disagree or you're wrong, but listen and see if out of that they don't open up your eyes to the possibilities of it being a little different, or possibly what it was that spoke to them, and then learn from that. But at the end of the day, all of you, honestly, you can't give your own art spirit away to anybody else, just to get into a show or garner approval. And that was something Margaret taught me early on. She said, ask for critiques, be polite, listen, don't challenge. You can ask for clarification, but then you don't have to own it if you don't believe it applies. So you don't have to argue with that expert. You can just say, you know what, my painting was rejected. I like that painting. And believe it, don't take it out of the frame and, oh, it's bad because it got rejected. I mean, we always talk about Van Gogh, right?
Yeah.
If that poor guy if he'd have dealt with rejection the way some people do, we would have no paintings of his hanging in museums at this point. So, that's all I'd say. It's tough, but own it.
Thank you, Richard. And sometimes there is a saying, do what I um, do what I say, not what I do. Do you follow your own advice? So how do you deal with rejection? So if you do not get accepted in a show, what you really wanted to get in?
Well, I really am proud of what came out of those juror conversations, and even some conversations I've had with other people, is that you need to embrace being human. Rejection's hard, so you can mourn for a day, an old saying that friends of I share, and we get to celebrate for a day if we get into the show. But then that following day, again, you don't graduate. I mean, this is the oddest profession way that we're in, where we didn't build a widget that we then just manufacture, that it ceases to become art then. So there's always that cyclical churning coming out of it. And then I will, honestly, when I've gone through a long string of rejections and things aren't selling, and and it affects you. It affects how I paint. There's so much sensitivity there that all of a sudden I just don't feel confident when I'm putting the pastel down or applying the paint to a surface. I will go to those masters. I'll find somebody and I'll say, it's not about an individual painting, but look at what I've been doing. Can you just look at what I'm doing and give me your observations? Great word. And that tends to get me out of that feeling of dealing with rejection, because what they'll point out is maybe my paintings have become moodier, or maybe there's a little bit of a somberness to what I'm painting right now. And that isn't appealing to everybody else. And so they'll say that, they'll notice it, and I'll go, and I like that because that's where I'm at. That's who I am right now. And so, yeah, I'm getting rejected because it may not be appealing to everybody, but that's what I'm meant to be doing right now. So it validates. And also, Dasha, and it's something that I feel with you as an artist friend, watching you come up with your own work, is you have to build trust. That all the painters we know are humans. That's what we are. And
it's for right now.
With that, we bring our foibles and our insecurities. And it is hard. I've watched artists age like where I'm at, and you see the young up and comers, and you've got to step back and just say, good for them. It's like athleticism. I can't run quite as fast. I'm not creating the new what I'm doing now. Look at what they're doing. That's exciting. And you can still stay in the game, but if you always have that expectation, you're going to be disappointed. And then you have to fight to not let it become petty. It can happen. That's just the sad part, is that people can become hypercritical of often the next generation or that other crop of artists coming up. So that's kind of my perspective, is I attempt to do my own work. I like to be introspective. I call it a rear view mirror. And I look at myself. I go, am I really being brutal in that critique on this person because there's some little bit of envy, And if I say, no, I firmly think that's my opinion, then I go ahead and do it. I say it to them, what I think. So honesty and trust is big. You've got to feel that.
Thank you so much for this answer. And I have few old friends joining us. We have Svetlana Cameron, who was live with us yesterday. We have Linda Mati saying hello. And Yana Golikova say thank you. She's our I, IF's representative,
Yeah.
another person from Red Rock who
Mhm.
even got an award. So people are very
Yes.
thankful, and there is so much of wisdom and kindness what you bring. And I think that's your secret why people keep coming back to your critique sessions. So it took me, I think, 5 times to get a critique out of you. So you usually give compliments, and I'm like, no, I
Oh,
don't
oh,
paint well. So
oh,
usually,
oh,
so
oh, oh.
I got critique only on the fifth time. You told me, yes, you need to work on your drawing. Yes, you need to do values.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
But see,
But
the thing
before,
you said, because, and I love that. People say this even during the day painting when I walk around. It's like, oh, you're so complimentary. And that gets back to most people have a hard time owning or believing and accepting what they've done well. We are kind of societally trained to be hypercritical of ourselves. I can run faster, I can do it better. And yes, we want that guidance, and we want somebody showing us maybe some clues that can make us better. And so that's the thing. In teaching, for me, it's becoming a coach. I have my game, I can show you my game, and I can explain how my game's involved. But then I have to pay attention to your game and not project who you're supposed to be, but create a dialogue. And if I can provide any help in strengthening you in your game, that becomes the ultimate goal. But really, that thing about compliments, most people don't want to own that. We all know, so true in everything. You can flatter somebody with 20 things they've done brilliantly, and you mention the one flaw, and that's what they remember.
exactly.
So
And,
that's
and
useful. That's useful. But until you own what you do well, you won't get better in painting. It's true, because that becomes your instinct. I feel confident with this because I know I do it well. That's how you become a winner, is you're capable of doing that. So anyway,
thank you, Rick.
I'll get off of that. I'll get off that soapbox. But
No, thank you, Richard, and various people like old friends and my team members and old uh, painter friends who say what you very kind. They agree with everything. So thank you so much, and very so much insight you sharing during even this Instagram live impromptu conversation. Can you spill a secret? Are you working on a next book?
no. So no secret to divulge.
Why?
Well, and I really do attempt to be brutally honest, and sometimes that doesn't serve things well. But publishing has shifted. We've I've seen it in my generation. Like, we have everything. The record industry came and went, and publishing has really shifted. Everything is becoming more digital, more print on demand, more doing your own project. And my goals, was old school. I don't like selling my own work, and I really don't sell it. Sometimes at a workshop, if a student wants a demo, we can arrange a little demo sale, but otherwise I don't bring work. It's just not who I am, and I don't sell out of my studio. So I always wanted a gallery. And then when it was writing, after teaching for a long time, I wanted a publisher. And that's shifted so much now. I mean, video has shifted. It's all becoming like this. It's live. It's Zoom teaching and all those things. But recently, after when I did kind of the coffee table book of a few years ago, the hardback book that was really
Beautiful.
well, and it was a project that was born out of the head of the fine arts department of F&W, which of course F&W now is gone. It's been broken up into other little companies and acquired after a bankruptcy. knowing me and knowing what I'd done in just writing for the magazine and teaching, he said, "You have so many stories. Pick paintings and share the stories and the technical stuff." And the further I got into that, it became like a legacy project for me. And not in the sense of there's anything brilliant in it or that the paintings are the best paintings ever. I've never been delusional that my work is merits
So, like,
the
here is the
Louvre.
humility comes out
No,
of the
no, I think it's
research.
a but it's a humility of perspective also. I mean, I take pride in what I've done, and that's what I'm going to hit. Is that to me it was pulling back that curtain again. And in an odd way, and I'm a generation of the Wizard of Oz, is to say painters are wizards, we're magicians. And so much of it is hocus pocus and, are people believing this and all that stuff. And so that book became, through those stories and the technical information, really a funnel. Everything I know technically has been given to me either through books I've read, people I've been fortunate to work with or heard from, and then you digest it and you make it your own. And that's what I want other people to do too. It's nothing but a legacy we carry on artistically, is to motivate and inspire. So at the completion of that book, I was really done. But now, with the ability to self-publish and stuff, I have some ideas. I don't know what the future is going to hold. God, right now, none of us really know what the future is going
No,
to hold.
no, no, nobody knows. And I
Yeah.
have a next question from friends, and I still will ask: Can we dream about having convention in 2021 in person and not by Zoom?
Yes. What I'm going to say is I'm not going to be overtly optimistic. We've
Yeah.
watched from the, I'm very pragmatic. It came from my childhood. And, that's another thing. And figuring out who we are really helps us figure out who we are as painters. But that pragmatism and just being kind of grounded about it all, when it started to unfold, I started amassing the various teams at IAPS. And so, we have strategic plans. We have time frames that we're paying attention to. We understand what our options are within the convention. You've alluded to one, which that would be, in a way, our worst case scenario would have to go to a virtual convention and presentations, but it's an option. So right now we're optimistic and we're working with the facilities there and the artists involved. This is what we've told the demonstrators as well. And the people that are anxious is no firm commitments. Nobody's being asked to register right now or, you know, put their
Do anything
name
yet? Yeah.
on a line. But we're moving forward incrementally, my favorite word, with that as being our end goal. With the expectation, and rationally, really everyone, things will be different for all of us, whether it's galleries, teaching, or even conventions like this. There's going to be some long-term ramifications, even if there's a vaccine tomorrow that opens everything back up. People's lives have been affected. And again, I'm of an age where I've gone through a few little shifts like this in time, maybe one not quite as dramatic as this and long term, but it isn't the end of the art world. It's not the end of the activities we're doing. And so we're in an interesting place because the first week in June next year is falling on the cusp of when we think things are going to be much more stable. We have a better understanding of what we are dealing with out there, but the expectation it'll be a little different if the convention happens. But right now, yes.
Right now, yes. And what was the theme of my interviews? Because Red Rock also had some events what we had to postpone to uncertain times. I'm saying you cannot plan right now, but you can prepare and you
Yeah.
can dream.
Yeah.
So that's all we've been doing. And I'm very thankful for all your work, what you're doing for IAPS as a president of IAPS organization. And I get a lot of questions because it's a little bit confusing. So we are Red Rock Pastel Society. There is Chicago Pastel Painters. There is PSA. There is Russia. There is China. And there is IAPS. Like, can you please explain what's the difference between Pastel Society and IAPS?
You know, it briefly, and I know I'm rarely brief, and in a self-deprecating way, I say I know I talk way too much and explain way too much. The evolution of the pastel societies, especially in the Western area, coming out of the European model and then what came out of New York, is early on, other groups started asking, like Flora B. Gaffuni, who was the president and founder of PSA in New York in 1972, that, you know, how can we form a society? And she encouraged them. So societies started popping up all over the United States. I mean, pastel really took off here. And it's always been, of course, popular in France, but not really even as popular as it has been recently in the United States. And it was Urena Christie Tarbert, who was a friend of Flora's and participated in the PSA events, who kind of said, you know, we have all these regional groups. We're all working, here's the key, towards the same mission statement, the same goal, which is the promotion, education about the fine art medium of pastel. We don't want the medium to fade into obscurity, and so we want it to stay vital. So she kind of formulated that idea of forming IAPS, International Association of Pastel Societies, and she thought beyond the United States. The key here is the semantics of the word, and we run into this all the time. We are an association, not a society. So what we are is we represent our members, and our members are the societies. So people like you and your board, and then you represent your general membership. So the general membership of the society garners access to the resources of IAPS, exhibitions, educational information. You know, we can provide those tools, but our real membership are the member societies. And as my mission has been to really make it international, and we've seen major growth with that. But with that, there's a little bit of a United Nations, League of Nations quality at times with pastel. So it's really that semantic that we are not a society. We're not here to compete with the societies. We're really here to elevate and promote the societies. So we're always looking for advice, and the ear. You always have our ear at IAPS on what we can do better and what we're maybe doing well in serving the pastel societies. But you're the boots on the ground. It's all of you that are really doing the work in your communities, in your regions, in your areas, in the visibility of pastel, you know, local exhibitions, people being able to see it, figuring out that it's not just chalk on a chalkboard. There's something magical about it. And that all, again, just keeps pushing the medium into the future.
Thank you so much, Richard. You and Red and all your board and all the volunteers who do their hard work for IAPS. Because of you, we have online exhibitions, we have a representation of the societies, and we have a guidance. So we have a guidance where to go with our local work and what can we do, like just leading by example is how I say. So we look at IAPS and we see what we can do. We look at our neighbors in Southern California and we can see what we can do better. We're looking at our neighbors in Arizona and we learn from them too. So that's very important.
One of the words I like to use a lot, which is I see IAPS facilitating a dialogue as well. You know, from the President's Forum, we're working on even some digital outreaches now to various societies so that we can all sit down at the table, again, the kind of League of Pastel Nations in a way, and share and pool that information and resource, because together we're a lot stronger than we are individually.
Thank you so much, Richard. And let us get back to why we're conducting all our live interviews, is to invite everybody who watching us to participate in Red Rock Pastel Society online exhibition. Yes, you have to be a member of Red Rock. Judges amazing, jurors amazing, and prizes are great. Richard?
Well, I don't know how you got those amazing jurors, so I'm glad as a judge I can't enter the show. That's a great group of jurors, Dasha. Wow.
I feel like I did a little bit overkill on my online show in the circumstances, but I remember your conversation about sometimes you just need, like, if you really want things to take off, you need to go a little bit overboard. Like, buy a full monty of blue earth, buy a full monty of blue earth pastels. You will have to paint, right? Because you just spent money, you know, just a little bit. It's a Russian thing. It's what we do usually.
Wow, keep doing it, because I mean, that you really have done just a great job. Again, great society, and we really appreciate all the efforts of finally getting Nevada on the Pastel Society map there. And as you said, people are welcome to join well beyond the regions. That's the other thing I've noticed about pastel societies historically, is when our access was more physical and not through the various means that we now have. Even in shipping paintings back in the day, there wasn't FedEx and UPS and stuff.
Yeah.
We now are much, you know, I belong to numerous societies really all over the place and participate to whatever degree I can. So nicely done.
I can, like, thank you, and thank you to all my team. I know Katya, Vika, other volunteers are watching. Christine Bowman just joined us out of San Diego, and without them and others whom I may not name, David, Jeff, Ray, others, like, that wouldn't be possible what we're doing. So maybe I'm a talking head, but it's a team behind me right now. And Richard was right there every step of the way from our conversation at the easel and National Arts Club, like, what should we do, and supporting us along the way, and coming to Las Vegas to teach wonderful workshop, and trusting me with getting you there safely. So all this amazing stuff, you know.
Oh, we had a good time. We had a good time.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
I just remember I saw Vika there, and she had a great question to you. Where is a great art schools where you can go in US? So what's a great art school you can go in US for the proper artistic training? Any recommendations?
So you're probably talking to the wrong person. And I know there are amazing art departments and ateliers and academies that pop back up. When I was coming up, they were on decline, and it was almost all just university art programs. And again, depending on who the head of the art department was, you could obtain a great education. I, in a way, and I don't believe in the term self-taught, I think we're all influenced, but through your own incentive, the books are out there, the people are available. You know, if you're in an area where you can connect in a good school, do it. But also realize what it is you want to garner from it. Same as when you take a workshop from someone or you buy that certain art book. Don't always just be looking for the answers. Learn to look for what it is you need. If you need skill in drawing, find the best drawing academy or the best place to acquire that. If you want information on design, find that. You know, you have to look at it like ingredients instead of, I would say, just one source. And then also look at your creative intention. You know, it's like singing. There's classical, there's opera, there's jazz, very improvisational. Someone that has a jazz voice is going to feel very stifled, not very successful if they're being trained to sing opera. Yet the notes are all the same. See what I'm getting at? And the opera singer
Yeah.
really wants that classical training. You know, I love that. I spent times learning all the old ancient atelier and the French High Academy and the Italian schools and all those places. And it serves you well. You know, really at the end of the day, you have to know how to draw, and then you learn the things about value and color, but then you've also got to find that voice. And that becomes important. You know, it's the ugly duckling. You're going to feel like you don't belong, or it's not the right educational system, yet everybody else is happy and successful until you do find your tribe.